Hello everybody! So I finally got my Steam Deck and I've been using it a lot for the past 3 months that I've had it. Now I know a lot of people still can't get a hold of these, but if you haven't heard, Valve has been increasing production quite a bit and they started selling them in other countries too. So I think availability is getting better out there, so if people want these, I think it will be easier to get soon. So specs wise, the Steam Deck has a custom AMD APU with 16 gigs of RAM and a 7-inch screen that's 1280 by 800. Now that's a pretty low resolution, but there's a reason for that. It's actually pretty decent pixel density for this size, and the lower the resolution, the easier it is to run the games. There's 3 different configurations of this, but the only difference between them is the storage size and speed. The price to performance value that you're getting is a lot better on the Steam Deck than any of the other handhelds that are getting popular these days. So let's go over the controls and the ports that the Steam Deck has. So starting from the top, we have the L1 and L2, the R1 and R2. And if you check out the back, they actually have back triggers. It starts with the L4 and L5, R4 and R5. And now the reason they start at 4 after 2 is because this is typically the L3 and this is the R3 when you press them in. Well, right back here is the air intake, so try not to block that when you're gaming. Back to the top, you have the volume down, volume up, a normal headphone jack. Here's the fan grills where it blows the air out. Now it's not super loud, but it is audible. Right now I have no game playing, but you can probably hear it. I'll put it up to my microphone. Now if you're playing an intensive game, the fan does kick up louder than this. There is an extra fan mode if the fan noise bothers you, but it will heat up the machine a little bit more. Over here is the fully functional USB-C port. It's a USB 3.2 Gen 2, so it's very fast. Mostly people will be using it as just a charging port, and it's the only port on here to charge. Here is the charging indicator and the power button. And going to the bottom, there's not much here except for the SD card slot. Now in the front, we have the D-pad. I'm going to call this the select button over here, or the back button. Your left analog stick. The left touchpad. It also functions as a button if you press down on it, so it works as a D-pad. The Steam button actually does quite a bit, but it opens a menu. And then if you hold Steam and certain buttons, it will bring up like the keyboard, and you can take screenshots and different things like that. On the right side, we have the right analog stick, the start button, or I guess that's the menu button maybe, I don't know. Standard Xbox layout, A, B, X, Y. You have the right touchpad, which is also pressable. This is the quick settings button where you can access the quick settings. And one thing that people don't really tell you is that these analog sticks have a touch sensor on the top, so they actually know when your thumb is sitting on them. For a lot of the games, you'll notice that it uses it so that you can use the gyroscope that's built into the Steam Deck and to move the camera and stuff. The controls is actually one of the advantages of the Steam Deck compared to all the other Windows handhelds that are coming out. And the reason for that is because with the addition of these touchpads and just the customizability with the extra buttons on the back, you can actually configure this to play a lot of different PC games, not just the one that use like a standard controller layout. For instance, I've been playing Chimera Squad, which doesn't really support controllers, but I can use this as a mouse. Use this touchpad as the number keys. And it's all fully configurable to the way you like it. So comfort-wise, I do have a little bit of an issue with this the layout of the Steam Deck. Now, my hands aren't very big, admittedly. So if you have similar hands to mine, maybe you'll have the same issue. I don't know how to measure this, but let's say it's about 5.5 inches from the tip of my thumb to the bottom right of my palm here. Now, if I'm holding this like a standard controller, I would hold it like this. But the reach to these analog sticks doesn't allow me to do small motions, especially when I'm trying to go upwards this way, like the far end of the analog stick. which is going to be a problem if I'm playing like first-person shooters where it needs more precise movement, or fast-paced games like Dark Souls that I've been playing here. So what I've been doing is actually holding it more like this. Now there's a problem with this too. Now I can have more control over the analog sticks, but most of the weight for the Steam Deck, which is actually quite heavy, is going to be held by just my fingers. Now I think this is kind of the way it was meant to be, and it's kind of a workaround because they had no place to put these analog sticks, because holding it like this is perfect for the back buttons. Like my fingers are literally resting on the back button. Whereas if I was holding it like I would a normal controller, it's kind of past the back buttons here. And I have to reach over here to click on it. So yeah, most games, slower paced games, are fine holding it like this. But I realize that faster paced games, more twitchy games, I need to hold it like this, which is a little bit crampy actually. Then there's another problem. It's harder to reach the L1 and R1 buttons when I'm holding it like this, because my thumb and my fingers are kind of closer. I'll try to explain a little bit better. So here is a normal Steam controller. Now this is actually really comfortable because I hold it like this. Most of the weight is distributed to here when I'm holding the Steam controller. And you can see that my index finger and my thumb is a good distance apart, so it doesn't feel weird to push these buttons here. Now, the Steam Deck, if I'm holding it like this, I have to move it closer for one thing, and then I have to reach up, and then my finger and my index finger and my thumb have to be pretty close. So it's not super comfy. I'm pretty sure it was a workaround because there's just no space around here, especially with these touch pads. But it will affect your comfort in using this for a long time. So the Steam Deck runs on SteamOS, which is a modified version of Linux. And that means most Windows games shouldn't be playing on this. But they also have been working on something called Proton, which allows Linux to basically play Windows games on it. But the problem is it doesn't work with every game. And that also means that they have to test every game to make sure it runs. So here's the home menu, which I don't spend too much time in, but it is a good spot if you want to just go back into the game you've been playing recently. Most of the time, I'll be in the library menu. And as you can see, here's all my games list. Out of 1,315 games, 300 of them are great on the deck. Now, great on the deck means that it has that green check mark, and the green check mark means that it should run perfectly just when you install it and run the game with no problems. Now, I also have the games with the yellow icon, and that means that they're playable, but they might have some issues. So you can actually go in here and check what all the issues are. So for instance, this one says it's playable, but the game will sometimes show mouse, keyboard, or non-Steam Deck controller icons. Really a non-issue for playing the game, but some other games might have other kinds of issues, and they'll let you know exactly what they found in their testing. Now, some games are straight up unknown. It has that little question mark icon. Now, the question mark icon means that they haven't tested it. Valve is still learning about this title. We do not currently have any further information regarding Steam Deck compatibility. But that just means that they haven't got around to testing it, and the game might run. And in this case, it does run. So you'll have to kind of try the game that you want to play and just see if it works. And some games are just literally unsupported like that. But the game runs fine. Like it specifically says it's unsupported. Valve is still working on adding support, but the game runs fine. Maybe later on they'll have an issue, but I can actually just run this game. As you can see, this unsupported game starts up fine. Who knows, maybe I'll have problems later, but at least you can get the game started. Over the past 3 months I probably had about 2 or 3 updates already. And they actually added more games because before it was like around 270 or something like that, that are great on the deck. So they're continuously working on it. So Dark Souls 3 is a Steam Deck verified, which means that it should just run out of the box. And it kind of does. You can actually set up the controls before you start the game by going to the control icon. And what it does is automatically give you a recommended layout. So the problem with the Dark Souls layout, the one that it chooses, is that it uses motion controls. So while I was playing it, see it tells you to use the official layout. So here's Dark Souls, and the official layout it comes with has this as the mouse look, which I said is an issue if I have my hand on here and I accidentally touch. So you can see it slightly moving if I actually touch it on the bottom corner, which is bad if you're playing this game and you're trying to be a little twitchy and aim at things. The other thing is, so I'm moving this around, and then I've noticed sometimes it seems a little bit twitchy, and I'm making sure I'm not touching here. But remember that I told you about this capacitive button on the thumbstick? For whatever reason, From Software decided that while it's also being used as a camera control, when your hand is on it, it'll also use the gyroscope at the same time. So I'm not moving the thumbstick, I'm just moving the Steam Deck with my finger on it, and it becomes a gyroscope. So there's 3 different ways of moving the camera, and 2 of them are just having my finger on this in the same spot. So this is not the best control scheme. I don't know why they chose this one. But you have to go to the Steam menu, go to controller settings, and then this will kind of tell you an overview of what the controls do. But go to the controller settings, and then basically you'll have to choose a different one that works for you. So there's templates. The templates are kind of like generic ones. Usually I would stay away from these. Go to the community layouts. Usually they have really good ones here. But in this case, there is a good recommended one. It's just that they just chose the wrong one for it. I usually go to the standard controls. And basically it just uses the left side of the touchpad as select and the right side as start, which is fine. I already have start and select over here, but at least it doesn't get in the way. And then once I load that, no weird stuttering because the gyroscope's disabled. I don't have to worry about this touching my thumb because nothing happens there. Oh, it's just like playing on a regular console. So this is kind of what I mean by you're going to have to work at getting things fixed a little bit for each game. If you're used to PC games, you're probably not too worried about that because you do that for every game that starts up. You know, configure things to make it work for you. Now the projected battery life is only 1 hour and 38 minutes with 74% battery. I'm actually limiting the performance on this because I changed the refresh rate of the screen to 40 Hz. The frame rate limit is set to 40 Hz. Because if I just let it go, it'll hit around, as you can see it's a stable 40, but if it'll hit around 55 or so frames, but it'll have some dips and stuff. But the problem with that is the battery will be really low. So I have 1 hour and 30 minutes now. If I let it go all the way, now you can see the battery life dropped to 1 hour and 13, and it's continuously dropping little by little. So the battery life is not very good for games like this if you let it run at full power, basically. So that's another tweak that you're probably going to want to do, limit the frame rate, especially when it can't really hit a good frame rate anyways, to get yourself better battery life. That's something that console people just don't really have to worry about very often. I mean, if you're playing a Nintendo Switch, there's not even a setting for that type of stuff anyways. So you know what you're going to get. But here you might want to tweak things a little bit and make it kind of work for you. It's definitely not just an out-of-the-box good experience, especially if your battery's going to die in 1 hour. What do I think this is good for? So I bought it mainly to play through my backlog, and actually it's been great for that. Over the past 2 months, I've already finished 4 games on this Steam Deck that I wouldn't on my PC because I don't want to sit at a table or I don't want to lug my laptop around, and things like that. I like playing on the couch sometimes. So being able to do that and getting some value out of the games that I have, I mean, it's great for me. It's also good as a secondary device for someone that has a gaming PC. You already have a Steam account and you want to be able to play on the go without lugging around, something huge like your laptop and things like that. The good thing about it is that the updates are pretty frequent. Games are getting compatible. They're working more on the newer games, and I have an older library, so I'm sure the Great on Deck compatibility will be a little bit slower. But most of the newer games coming out are kind of tailored to the Steam Deck, so it should work really well. There's great community support. It's a total computer, so you can do a lot of things with it, and I'm actually going to make some tutorials on how to put Windows on here and stuff like that. I don't think it's great for people that want an easy to use experience, just kind of like a console, like a Nintendo Switch almost, where they just download the game, start it, and they don't really have to do anything, and it just works fine. Even if it is great on deck, you might have to tweak settings like control schemes and things like that. So it might not be good for people that really don't want to tinker too much. But I'm glad you guys stuck around, and I hope you like this review. I'm gonna go play with my Steam Deck a little bit more, and I'll let you know if I come up with anything else about it.